situation that requires me to hurl a baited hook over a wall of brush. Indeed, it is good advice for everyday life. Always listen for the kerplunk. Otherwise, your line may not even be in the water. As I recall, the catching of the fish that day was rather tedious and miserable, the weather being wet and cold. Biff baited the hook on each pole and then whipped the line over the brush. We then walked back to the beginning of the row of poles. I think there were 8 or 10 of them, and reversing his maneuver of sending the line out over the brush, brought it back, with a fish looping through the air and plopping on the ground behind us. Most of the trout we caught seemed to run to the small side, about 8 inches or so. Good, though. Biff dropped each in the bucket as he caught it. Within an hour and a half, we had in the bucket what in those days was described quite accurately as one heck of a mess of fish. Still, I doubt we were over our combined limits, because the limit for trout back then was 21 per fisherman, so we would have been perfectly legal, provided Biff had had a license. I think the unofficial limit back then was all you can catch plus 1 fish, but even so it was unusual for anyone to reach even the official limit. To say you caught your limit meant something in those days. It usually meant you were lying. I remember only one fellow back then who practiced catch and release. He was eventually nabbed, I think, and placed in an institution. Biff also gave me my second piece of fishing advice: use a strong leader. I doubt his own leaders could have been used to tow a logging truck out of a mud hole, but they would have served well for most jobs short of that. As I mentioned earlier, I found casting a line over the wall of brush to be much harder than it looked. Several times I cast over the brush and didn't hear the kerplunk on the other side. On these occasions, Biff would drag the log or stump or branch or whatever the hook had become attached to back over the brush. Also, I don't recall ever losing a fish because a leader snapped off. So always remember to use a strong leader, particularly if you're fishing with a tamarack pole. I started fishing with flies when I was about 10. Later, I would learn there is nothing that attracts unwanted advice so voluminously as fly fishing. But back then, my fishing buddy, one Vern Schultz, didn't know any more about fly fishing than I did. If Vern caught a fish, I'd ask him, "What are you using?" "Big old gray thing with white wings," he'd reply. "Good," I'd say. "I got one of those." There were 2 flies we actually knew the names of: black gnat and royal coachman. If someone asked us what our favorite fly was, however, we'd almost always say royal coachman, because that sounded so much better than black gnat. Neither of us ever caught a fish on the royal coachman. Apparently, the fish in our part of the country had never seen a bug that looked even remotely like a royal coachman. All of our flies were big, too, number 10s, and even 8s and 6s. You needed hooks that big in order to get a really strong leader to fit through the eyes. But we seldom lost a fly. Oh, sure, sometimes when we had to drag a stump or log out of a creek, but it was better than losing a fly. I've fished with Vern for more than half a century, and I don't think he has even once given me a bit of advice on how to catch fish. He always catches more fish than I do, so maybe it's just that he doesn't want to reveal any of his secrets. Our method of fly fishing was, first, get the fly in the water. That's it. There's nothing else. Get the fly in the water. If the fly isn't in the water, it isn't going to catch a fish. Even though I have 2 whole library shelves devoted to fly fishing, the entirety of my fly fishing technique after all these years consists of nothing more than getting the fly in the water. This fact raises great consternation among my fly fishing friends and guides. They cannot help but shout advice to me, occasionally with the emphasis of very bad 14-letter words. Keep your rod